88 ways to pleasure the feminine? Why pleasure? Why not happy? Why not just make her happy and comfortable? Why 88 ways to pleasure? Especially since I can get into so much trouble for using that word. YouTube banned me from using that word in my titles when I began. It's a subversive word. You're not supposed to be pleasured as a woman. You're just supposed to tolerate. It's supposed to be okay. But what if she's libidinous and lustful and crazy for what you're doing? Then she's a slut, right? Lights gone. Okay, so why do you need to have this channel? Is because the reason that something so obvious about the woman needs pleasure like you do, that it needs to be talked about at all, it's heartbreaking. It's terrifying, because what's happened is we have all but forgotten what it really is to pleasure the feminine. Pleasuring her is heart, body, and soul. That's the whole being of the woman, okay? To make her happy is to help her with things that will make her life easier, to make her, what's another word, like comfortable, is to be aware of her safety and well-being. But to pleasure her, that has to do with her unreasonable desire, her crazy wild desire that may be way beyond yours. So the traditional concept of woman is that her sexuality is much smaller than the man's, that the men are walking around horny all day compared to her. And in this day and age, that's become true, sadly. A lot of the time, but not all the time. But really, what it is if the woman's in feminine flow, the figure 8, the 88, then she is awakened to a level of sexuality that is just ongoing. It's like they did experiments to see how women's minds get turned on through imagery, and the men were pretty predictable. Like if they were gay, it was another gay man, with his kind of buff body that gay men like. If he was straight, it would be like the kind of woman from his background, big curvy if that's his background, or small and skinny if that's his background, but always pretty predictable. But when they showed all of the imagery to women of the world, which they had also done with the men, like flowers and trees and butterflies, babies' faces, and the men were just kind of neutral until they got to the naked lady. But for the women, everything turns them on, and apparently when they do this experiment. This is from the book Sex at Dawn, which I think you might want to read. It's kind of fascinating, but it's an experiment that was done that showed that everything women looked at basically turned them on. Images of trees blowing, clouds moving, the genitals of the woman are like, so this is the way women are. But because we're in a society where men have the prerogative, basically, of life, dominating the way the world's been set up for a couple thousand years, the women have become very masculine and basically have forgotten our way of flow. So because the women are so masculine, they'll be in the pump and grind thing too. So you get into a new relationship and it seems like it's all good. Everybody was doing their thing. They're really right? But then suddenly it drops off for the woman completely. Like she's just not there. And she's dreading it suddenly. And the guy's like, what happened? Like, look at me. I'm buff. I came in like a ram. I was hard. I had epic energy. I was athletic. I saw myself in the mirror. I know I was great. And meanwhile, it's left her cold. And to her, he's walking away. That was a great event. He's like, no, that was an epic event. And for her, suddenly it wasn't an event at all. Like it doesn't even register as a blip. And in Sex at Dawn, they talk about this also, the way that sex registers for women versus men, versus the full-on sensuality, whole heart, body, mind, soul, cosmic lovemaking, where for her it's like, okay, so how do you get her there? Well, 88 ways to pleasure the feminine. You're starting an epic journey with me. And the part of the reasons why are that the women themselves have forgotten that they need pleasure. They don't know the difference between pleasure and please. He pleased me. They don't know the difference between true pleasure because it's been lost. It's a lost art. But the thing is, we're ready for it now. We are. As a culture, as a society, at least in the United States, and I believe in many places in Europe and Brazil, probably, and what are other amazing, Portugal. Anyway, so as men, you're taught that if you get the job done swiftly and efficiently, it's a good thing. And now the women have become internally masculine, so they're also on a time clock. Okay, I got a half hour. Let's do a quickie, but the thing is, this is just not really being in relationship. This is really just sort of using each other for release, right? So truly relating is scary, and it's vulnerable, and it's creative, and it's always new territory, because every woman's different, and every woman's different every time. Ooh, get that? So what we want to do is we want to get back to the question of pleasuring her, okay? So it's a subversive verb, but the reason it's like a dirty verb, and YouTube doesn't want me to use it, is because you have been taught, she has been taught, that everything of the feminine is basically to be dismissed. So that means like herbalism, women's magic herbalism, it's like not valid. Let's see, her dancing, oh well, that's from the devil. Her really intense passion and sexuality, oh well, that's like addictive. Her really powerful feelings, really deep emotions, oh, that's hysterical. Her her needs and her values, they're like, oh, dangerous. They undermine capitalism. They're really not about money. Like, she's gonna undo my business if I listen to her. So you get it. The feminine in you, if you want to be more emotional and more feeling, it's gonna be like entering into a taboo zone that the other men are gonna freak when you go there, because they're not allowed to go there. And the other women are going to be upset because they've sublimated their feelings to be like men in order that they can be powerful. Everybody's doing the same thing of denying the pleasuring of the feminine heart of life. So if you think about this, a lot of times, can you see this little drawing I did? Like, there's the yin and yang, right? That's the usual way they put the masculine, feminine dance. But I think it's more like this. It's a small circle inside a larger circle with a heart in the center. Because the yin and yang thing, it's sort of saying that everything is just always in equal polarity. But the truth that I see is that in the center of life, in the heart of all life, of the world, of the planet, of relationship, is the feminine. Is love, juiciness, sensuality, creativity, artistic flow. It is just like a really wild place that's not in control. The masculine that we need for that feminine bounty is the container. It's the circle, the nice, strong, thick circle that can contain all of that intense energy, but not a box. It's open at the top. So think of the image of the chalice. So that as she flows and builds up more and more energy, she starts to overflow the boundaries of the chalice. And that overflow should be your goal. Her overflow of pleasure, of laughter, of stories you've told, of connecting with her intellect, of Her overflow goes to the others. It goes to family. It goes to community. It goes to her girlfriends. And the men often, what they'll do with the boundary thing is they'll make such a tight boundary with a lid on it that they've trapped the feminine to keep her as their own, and they're jealous of her overflow. But it is her overflow, darling, that when she overflows, it goes down to her roots, and then it comes back up again. She needs to give in order to receive. It's just a feminine thing, and that's the truth of the feminine in you too. Am I saying too much all at once? I think you can get this, right? So that's it. That's the idea for today, okay? That's the why pleasure her. Because when the woman is that fountain coming from within and she's held by the masculine, these boundaries, it's like if she doesn't have some boundaries of you being there with your presence, like what are these mysterious boundaries? Your attention on her rather than on yourself. You're receiving her magic energy. If she doesn't have that, her energy dissipates. And it doesn't go to herself, it doesn't go to you, it doesn't go to anybody else. It just sort of spreads across the earth and it's all for the taking. And she's drained and she never gets to feel her own energy. So your containership, it's essential. It's essential, and it's the secret, to pleasuring the feminine is learning how to be the chalice, right? Which is a very different image than being the ramrod. Like it's a receptive thing. It's that how where there's paradox exists the divine. By you being receptive, holding her like she does in sexuality, she receives you. By you doing that energetically in life, this feminine thing, you become supremely masculine to her. She enters and opens into her wild flow, her abundant wellspring, which is something I want you to know about. I want you to experience this. So we're on a voyage here, 88 ways to pleasure the feminine, and we're going to be taking 8 at a time, and we're moving up through the chakras. The first ones will be the grounded ways to pleasure her. The next ones will be, some really physical, right in there with the sexuality ways to pleasure the feminine. And then we'll move into the power ways, the power dynamics of pleasure, and the heart dynamics, and the expressive dynamics, and the intellectual pleasure capacity you have for her. And then the spiritual, way of pleasuring the feminine that comes right back down to the root. Okay, much love, darling. Here we go.